is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Hey, how's that New Year's resolution going? You know, the one where you were going to eat better and exercise? Uh-huh. Okay, well, first of all, it's never too late to start, and here's proof you can do it. And best to do it before you end up with health problems. Meet Charlie Crumpton, a retired airline pilot who lost 240 pounds over the last 11 years thanks to diet and exercise. Daniel Dolgan is a psychologist who helped him put his book together entitled Color Me Healthy with Exercise and Nutrition. Charlie, how'd you do it?
I had open heart surgery, type 2 diabetes, and 6 major back operations when I was before 68. And after that, I went on a strict diet and exercise routine, and just about everything straightened out. My cholesterol dropped from 260 to 100. My A1C went from 9.3 to 6.1. And my triglycerides, although they're a little high at 238, dropped from over 1,200. So diet and exercise has worked for me, and I'm sold on it. And I did a lot of research on why and how exercise physically helps your body heal and resist diseases.
Okay, Daniel Dolgan, how did you two end up writing this book?
Well, he had a bunch of scribbled, almost undecipherable handwriting on a yellow legal pad, and I took that and typed it up, and it was maybe a few pages, and then it grew from there. I started adding information about the bones and joints, heart, lungs, and brain, cancer, skin. What makes it unique is that it has illustrations you can color while reading about, like the lymphatic system or stress. So you're relaxing and coloring, and you're also learning at the same time. One of my favorite illustrations is the wolf in sheep's clothing, and that is reading labels on supplements and food. There's a lot of information there, and we lay out what everything means, how to read labels. So if you do nothing else, at least know what you're using. It's an educational coloring book that's very positive, and it can truly make the difference between quality of life. It can improve that and at least heighten one's awareness of what you're doing with your body, what you're putting in it, what 10 minutes can do of just stretching, how it can improve your self-esteem for having done something positive for your life. And it's making you stronger for those around you. Research shows consistently that it improves mood, and it helps with longevity and keeps us out of hospitals for different types of surgeries. So does different types of food. It does make a difference, and we point that out. And sleep, nutrition, getting along with others, stress, how to deal with that. There's a lot that goes into maintaining, a healthy lifestyle. But everyone can benefit from it. And it's just a matter of getting, just to start moving.
So true, Daniel. Thank you. Canine embolism. Ever hear of it? Not many people have. It was a nightmare for Joe Flynn and his dog, Bubba. Most dogs don't survive, but somehow Bubba did. The name of his book, The Miracle of Bubba, an inspirational dog story.
It's such a unique story that I just had to write it because I think people need to hear the story. There's no way they could ever have a story worse than the one that I had because he was completely paralyzed. His tongue was somewhat numb in his mouth down to his tail. Had a very, very healthy black lab. He was 5 years old. He could do everything. And came home from work one day, and as I got out of my vehicle, I tossed a ball across the lawn. He was there waiting for me. As he's running across the lawn to get it, he collapses like a sack of potatoes right there and doesn't move. I thought he had a heart attack or something, And I thought for sure we would put him down. And even the vets I went to said, hey, he's got a 1% chance at best. So we figured out what was wrong with him. A canine fiber cartilage embolism. A piece of cartilage gets loose in the bloodstream, microscopic, and it can paralyze the dog in the spinal cord. This piece of fiber punches a hole in the spinal cord, in Bubba's case, behind his left ear in the neck. And all of the spinal fluid leaks out of his spinal cord into his body. And so without that spinal fluid in there, he's fully paralyzed. He doesn't feel anything, so there's not any pain or anything. And then it takes 3 to 4 weeks for the body to replenish that spinal fluid. But there's no muscle memory when the new spinal fluid comes back, and you don't have any idea of what the full damage is until you get the spinal fluid back, and then until you try and teach them to walk again through water therapy rehab, because the water makes the dog more buoyant, and so you have to teach him to move his legs. And it took us months.
Was it incredibly expensive?
It wasn't cheap, but he was my guy. So I said, I'm not going to give up on this guy unless I have to. I made the decision that if Bubba couldn't get back up on his feet, that we would put him down. 3 or 4 times in the book, I was there. I learned a deep respect for the technicians that work within a veterinarian's office, because the amount of work they had to put into keeping Bubba from having muscle atrophy. They had to move his legs every 6 hours, a couple times there. The staff talked to me and said, hey, let's give him 1 more week. And all of a sudden, he moved his tail, and we just grew on little mini victories. But in the end, it ended up him getting up and walking, running down the street and moving around again.
Yeah.
This really happened, and it involves people, involves a family. There's some things going on in my family at that time, and they're in the book. I had a son off in Iraq at the time. I had a daughter getting married, and I had a job, and I had this dog that had major problems. And so there was a lot of things going on then.
Yeah, but Bubba lived, thanks to you, Joe, till he was, 13 years old? It's amazing. When you think of Stonehenge, you think of the Druids, right? They built it. And Dr. Larry S. Mellon's ancestors were among them. He is the last Druid standing. That's the name of his book. The first of 6 describing the many facets of Druid culture. As an expert in stress management, this first book delves into healing.
What I did is I started with when I was born, based mostly on facts and some on legend and some on the mythology that I grew up with in Scotland. Nothing was written down because they were afraid that it would get taken by the wrong people and would be misused. And it was early on. So about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, they wrote them in the form of bards' songs, and so a bard could tell the story. The reason they had them sing the song rather than tell the story is because with the rhymes, they could remember it more precisely. And the reason I started writing is I waited until my father passed away because he was not an easy person to live with. But I needed to explain why I was raised by my grandfather and his 3 brothers. This book is about growing up as a Druid and becoming a Druid and learning all of the things that are associated with it, understanding the prophecies that have been made in the Druid culture, how I came about the knowledge of herbal medicines, how I understood how to make essential oils, how I learned that Druid craft. The Druid is a culture that has disappeared, but many of the things that we do now are based on that mythology and the legends of the Druid. The Druid was an herbalist. The Druid was a person that understood healing, understood the process of why we got sick, how we could feel, and how we could fix things. There's a scale called the Holmes-Rahe scale, which rates your body's stressors. And if you score around 250 or 300 on that, you will get ill. There's no question. And so what I teach is how to not get ill. Or if you get ill, how do you fix it? How do you reduce these stresses? There's an app on your phone that will measure acute stress. Acute stress is the short-term stuff that's bugging you right now. That's the stuff that causes heart attacks and strokes and things like that. Chronic stress, the long-term stress, it's the stuff that causes irritable bowel syndrome, Parkinson's, MS. And if you can learn to manage the stress, you can learn to manage the disease. That's part of what I learned. And so I go through the process of, first, you have to be a Druid in my world. And then once you've done that, then they begin to teach you the other things associated. What can you do? How can you manage this illness? Where did this come from? Why do I have this? But that's what I teach. I teach people how to heal themselves, because the best healer in the world is you.
Larry, I never knew that. Thank you. And speaking of things I never knew, you know when things go crazy and haywire in your life, like you just feel like you're out of control? You could be at the mercy of telepathic controls. Robert Hearn has the details on that in his book entitled Conversation with a Computer Concerning Telepathy.
You know, I got hit telepathically when I was about the age of 26, and I wondered what the devil was happening, so I've kind of been looking into it ever since.
What happened?
I'm not sure. You know, I did a play at Northridge State College, only 2 acts. It was called A Jabberwocky, and it was supposed to be a dystopian farce. And you know what the attitude is today towards people who tend towards the right. They don't like them in the state or the state colleges. The book is, I've got about 3 or 4 parts. I've got songs in it. I've got a telepathy questionnaire so people can ask these questions of themselves or other people. And basically, if anybody's having trouble with telepathic controls, why they can read this book and maybe gain a little bit of insight.
What exactly are you doing here?
If anybody wants to get any information on telepathic controls, why they can... You can tell the book by, I've got a doodle bird on the cover, and it's, say you're married, a freshly married couple, why he loves his wife, and then all of a sudden these telepathic controllers come in, and they start changing his love to hate, and he can't function anymore in the bedroom, is a nice way to put it. So that would be one reason for a lot of the split-ups in the marriages today. It's these telepathic controllers are interfering with the marriages. Then we go on to something from one of my plays, Is the Universe Infinite? I think I've sort of answered this. The first law of thermodynamics is there can't be a perpetual motion machine. So if you can't have an infinite universe, because it would be a perpetual motion machine. As I say, there is the adult play of 2 acts in the rear end of the book, and it's kind of fun. I've got zombies coming in and out, and there's a vampire, and play starts out with 2 space travelers going into the Freudian universe and landing and at a halfway station and getting their spaceship cleaned off from going through the Freudian universe. So this particular space station, where there would be different levels that people can go to in the nightclub, there'd be the id, the ego, and the superego. Superego, there wouldn't hardly be any dancing allowed or any close contact between people. In the ego, there would be dancing, and the superego, the id, why you'd have a raucous affair between all parties, be an orgy. And then they make plans to go to the behaviorist universe, and that's sort of fashioned after Pavlov's dogs. Salivation.
So you don't take any of this seriously?
No. I forgot to mention there's no proof for any of this, and it's science fiction. I have to say that because otherwise I might wind up in a padded cell.
Good to know, Robert. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything. Copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Yvette Dikorsky was a hair loss consultant before she retired to Florida, where she finally found the time to put together a book she wrote 35 years ago when she was teaching cooking classes at her son's elementary school. The kids were not listening, so to get their attention, she put a story together entitled Silence is Golden.
Well, the story is about two children finding out in town that there was a magical golden eagle, that all the children wanted to go to the mountains and see him, but they had to learn the secret magical words, and that's shh, silence is golden. They went to the grandfather. There was such excitement, and they said, "Grandfather, we want to meet the golden eagle." And of course, grandfather says, "You can. If you learn the secret magical words as you're climbing the mountain and follow all the rules, you will meet the golden eagle." And so they go on a journey. They have a wolf that came and ate their food, and then a bear came, and then the rain and the storms. But they listened and knew that in order to get to meet the golden eagle, they had to be very quiet to get to the top. And they did it.
They could be quiet.
Learn just secret magical words. Silence is golden. Yeah.
So you wrote this, you were frustrated because you couldn't get these kids' attention.
No, and right, exactly. And what's the magical part about it is I was making egg rolls that day, and I read the story, and everybody just couldn't believe the story, and they all put their finger to their mouth, and they went, shh. And I said, if you want your egg roll to be perfect, you got to follow rules and listen. And it was amazing. So the story went on, and I kept on telling many children, and they loved it. And it really did help them to achieve a higher level of thinking and following rules.
This book's been around and you've read it. Do you read it now?
I did a huge book signing in New Jersey at Westin Hotel. I'm also going to be doing another book signing in a mini mall in Delray area. A lot of people have been calling and asking for it. Orders are just coming in quickly. I can't believe it. The first 2 weeks on Amazon, it had 5 stars. It's now in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada. I'm just getting letters of ratings, and I'm just really excited. In fact, a great story happened. My son was here for the week with me, and he said, Mom, you're not going to believe. I said, what? My best friend in college saw the book. And they were so excited. And yesterday on Facebook, they wrote, "We love it. We love it. We're reading it to our children."
That's awesome, Yvette. Thank you. Mark David worked for a college yearbook publisher in Houston, and during his downtime, he wrote a book entitled Stage Flight. It took him about 20 years to perfect this story about a 15-year-old music prodigy who, like Elvis, when she died, no one wanted to believe it.
You know, when Elvis died,
Yeah.
and people didn't believe it because he was such an icon, that they started rumors that he was still alive. I mean, that's gospel. I mean, that really happened. But as I was driving home from work one day, it just dawned on me that would be a perfect scenario for a book. And I started writing it. And I just simply changed the characters around from Elvis. I created a 15-year-old girl who was a music prodigy, and she and her mother toured the country, and they were getting famous, and they ended up at the Houston rodeo. It's a murder mystery, is what it is, and 15-year-old girl is the heroine of the story, but I pretty much kill her off in the first chapter. There's an aha moment at the end of the story, because we don't know if this girl is still alive or whether she died in way back when she was attacked and was carted away to the hospital. I've got some great characters, and I have polished the characters over a 20-year period, and I'm real happy with the people that I came up with. And there's the aha moment basically comes when you find out either the girl lived or the girl died, and how it all came about. So it's a mystery, and the final couple chapters. Of course, there's a lot of music in this. The music itself drives the story.
Okay, good enough.
And I'm doing a book signing, and bought a box of books, and I'm going to promote them.
All right, Mark, you go. Nancy Ride was a victim of domestic violence when she turned to God and asked for guidance. That guidance came to her in the form of poetry. There are 70 poems in her book entitled God's Advice Through Comforting Words.
They deal with finding strength, encouragement, and understanding. I was married 24 years before she put us out in 2010. It started off verbal, and then it turned physical. So after the physical part, he decided he wanted to grab and fight when the kids were teenagers, and that was when the kids fought back for me.
So when did you start getting these messages from God?
During the, not the physical, but the verbal. It was a way of tearing me down, low self-esteem. My self-esteem was just gone. So in listening to all of that, I drew into God and began to pray and meditate and get into my Bible, and I would listen and I would write it down. I wouldn't get everything at once. I would get like a couple of lines here and there, but anytime I would hear words, I would just go ahead and write them down, then go back and look and read. It would encourage me, and I would read it to the boys to encourage them.
And so now you guys are okay, and you decided to publish this book?
Yes, ma'am. I talk to people where I work. They go through not spousal, husband and wife, but they go through verbal abuse and some domestic abuse from their grandchildren or their daughters or their sons. It's many different forms of domestic violence, and you'd be amazed. So I just try to encourage people, and I've given a couple of the people out there where I work the book, and they read it and meditate on it. So they'll read and say prayers. They'll read different poems in the book that give them encouragement. For me, it was a way out because I could write instead of taking in the things that my ex-husband now would say. And then it was like encouraging me, because had I not encouraged myself, my children and I would have still been in that situation.
That's a powerful message, Nancy. Thank you. Finally, several life experiences with sociopaths led Paul Conlan on a quest to help others and write his book entitled The Sociopath's Playbook, the quintessential guide to navigating the sociopathically adjusted playing field.
Well, one day I was in a used bookstore and I came across the official APA book for mental disorders, and I came across the term antisocial personality disorder, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks that, wow, there's an actual term for people who may not have consciences, and a lot of things maybe I've been through in my life, or a lot of things that I see external to myself seem to really click and make sense.
Did you ever have to deal with a sociopath?
Yes, I do feel particularly qualified to write about this because having had so many personal experiences that were potentially caused by sociopathic individuals, I fully disclose that I'm not a medical doctor or I'm not a psychologist, but the idea that advancements should only come from people who are experts in the field, that's kind of outdated, antiquated thinking as far as I'm concerned. Basically, this book takes into account what we know about what's called antisocial personality disorder, or internationally called dissocial personality disorder. And it's commenting upon what in many cases are just bullet points, skeletons of what kind of characteristics there are. And it's filling in those skeleton bullet points. It just elaborates, I think, better than maybe anything else that's out there currently.
Define a sociopath for me.
In simple terms, somebody who may have not been born with a conscience, who lies, cheats, steals, manipulates, coerces, intimidates, threatens, exploits. without remorse for their actions. So what I do in the book, I utilize fictional dialogue. In other words, I create characters here or there, and they help show examples of exactly how a behavior might manifest in real life. And that helps the read be more interesting as well. I have a subtitle, that long-winded subtitle, but actually underneath it on the cover of the book is what the real subtitle should be, because it's the value proposition. It says 50 tactics abusers use and 50 action plans to counter them. So that's what I feel would have such value and mass appeal to people. Like, if you bought this book, you would be able to see how these behaviors could be manifested by real people in real life situations, even through such fictional dialogue. So after each one of these tactics or abusive behaviors that I'm identifying in the book is an action plan section. And that action plan basically says, so if you're in this situation, here's some thoughts on what you could do. And there's little things in there that can help people. For example, when you're in interpersonal communication, people who are manipulative will try to tell you how long you're allowed to feel your feelings. And so I say, when you are in a situation where somebody wrongs you, and then they say, well, you really can't address that with me because that's been so long ago. To me, that's a manipulative behavior within and of itself that shows you that somebody's not really willing to work towards any sort of resolution with you. So it helps kind of open the mind to see things slightly differently, all these sorts of things that we're immersed in and that are happening all around us, that it could really help other people. It's just hard to get that message communicated.
Well, Paul, hopefully this is a start. So thank you. And thanks to all of our authors for joining us. That's a wrap for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, if you missed anything, just go to 710WOR.com and download the podcast. You can download this one or any other podcast. We're here every week, and I just want to know, what have you written lately? Anything? Come on! We are waiting for you to be a guest on the Page Publishing Book Club. It could happen. It could happen. Look, if these guys can do it, the people that you heard here, you can do it. You know you can. So get started. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.